You are beginning a journey, following a river of some 1,500 miles through a land of amazements that has the Grand Canyon at its heart. The journey launches over the headwaters of the rivers that have carved these canyons. Winging over Castle Valley, Utah, we're actually hundreds of miles north of Grand Canyon National Park itself. We're beginning here to show you how nature's water power created nature's most powerful scenery. In these rarely filmed headwaters, you're about to witness the changes of ages and the powers of time. The Grand Canyon's creation involved massive earth movements that pushed up land and rock a mile high in a region of North America today known as the Colorado Plateau. From these Rocky Mountains, which range along Montana, Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado, billions of gallons of water surge on a journey downward some 8,000 feet and westward 1,000 miles, creating a land of amazements. Photographed and presented in one continuous flow, our airborne journey flies you through what is a chain of remarkable and individual national parks. And on this journey, you'll be following in the footsteps of early First Peoples, of heroic explorers, and of courageous presidents. Welcome to Nature's Theater, to the seventh wonder of our world. You are beginning a journey of epic proportions on wings over Grand Canyon. What makes this Grand Canyon journey so memorable is the sheer range and diversity of the landscapes. The Grand Canyon most people experience spreads across some 277 river miles, yet the full length of the canyon is actually some 1,500 miles long. To start our journey, we fly out over the headwaters of the Colorado River as it cuts its way through the Colorado Plateau. From Castle Valley, we soar into Arches National Park, fly south into the Canyonlands, then into Glen Canyon, Lake Powell, and Marble Canyon, which brings us to the Grand Canyon itself with its North Rim and South Rim locations. Plus, we'll fly the little Colorado River Gorge, seldom seen by any visitor. Lastly, our journey heads into the west, discovering the West Rim and Lake Mead. Here are previews of this region's exceptional landscapes. Years ago, some of the first exploratory expeditions into the Grand Canyon simply never returned. Indeed, no one else dared it until 1869, when an Illinois geology professor named John Wesley Powell put together his own expedition. John Wesley Powell is to the Grand Canyon region what Lewis and Clark were to the Pacific Northwest. Despite an arm lost in the Civil War, Major Powell was unafraid of the personal dangers. He knew the unexplored Grand Canyon was a geological treasure of the world. With his crew of 9 mounted men and 4 specially built boats, Powell put into the Green River in Wyoming, knowing this river joined the Colorado River, ultimately flowing through the Grand Canyon itself. The day was the 24th of May, 1869, and no one, including John Wesley Powell, knew if he or his men would survive their journey. Entering our flight of exploration along a remarkable chain of unique national parks, we enter a land described as the West's best-kept secret. It is Arches National Park. It took almost a century for governments to safeguard this rare landscape. In 1929, Arches was declared a national monument by President Hoover. The original park was far smaller than what we enjoy today. President Franklin Roosevelt enlarged the Arches Park. Later, President Eisenhower added still more land, as did Richard Nixon. The last significant expansion of the park was by President Lyndon Johnson. So, our journey actually begins in the state of Utah, where Arches National Park is located. Unlike so many other canyon locations, Arches is rare for its easy accessibility by car and foot. Visitors never forget the rock sculptures made by the power of nature, sculptures that dwarf all that are around it. This segment of the Arches Park has the sandstone fins of a valley called Fiery Furnace. It has the name because it glows in the desert's setting sun. It's a labyrinth of sandstone canyons that once made great hideouts. Even today, in the Fiery Furnace, devices like GPS units are useless in telling you where you are. So a ranger-guided hike is the best possible way to experience this maze and return home to tell about it. As challenging as this environment of Arches National Park is, it is nevertheless people-friendly. Easy roads and highways provide many entry points. Those roads, paths, ranger trips, and scenic lookouts make this a lasting experience for its visitors. Spanish soldiers and missionaries came through in an unsuccessful search for gold in the 1700s. Ranchers, farmers, and prospectors later settled through the region in the 1880s. Word of the beauty of the area's rock formations then spread around the world. The first impressions people feel as they fly out over this landscape is that they are witnessing what looks like a million-year-old city. They see what appears to be a metropolis of ancient skyscrapers suddenly abandoned. Who lived here? What were their dreams, their hopes, their tragedies? Indeed, many did live here long ago, all the way back to the last ice age, 10,000 years past. Later, first peoples like the Anasazi, Fremont, and Pueblo people thrived here for centuries. Whenever people discuss the chain of parks that make up the Grand Canyon experience, they always remember Canyonlands National Park, one of the largest in the West and famous for stunningly different scenery and for landforms that stagger the imagination. Our journey on wings begins over a huge mesa known as Island in the Sky. From Island in the Sky, it's a short hop to Dead Horse Point with its great views and a good access road. Dead Horse Point is a lookout that's some 2,000 feet higher than most of the land around it. The entire Canyonlands Park is a wild place of countless canyons, mesas, and buttes carved over the centuries by the Colorado River and its tributaries. It's the highest section of this national park at an average elevation of 6,100 feet. Upheaval Dome is just a short distance from Dead Horse Point. It's almost 3 miles across, with rock layers twisted and torn and pulled in all directions. Geologists haven't agreed on how or why it even exists, but there's nothing quite like it. Some experts contend a large meteorite hit here ages ago. Great and powerful rivers divide the Canyonlands into 4 regions: the Island in the Sky, the Needles, the Maze, and the rivers themselves, including the Green River, which carried that team of explorers led on their journey by John Wesley Powell more than a century ago. Here you see what Powell saw, the mighty Green River of Wyoming merging into the larger Colorado, two of the greatest shapers of this wonder of the world. Water continues to change and carve this landscape, which results in these rivers changing colors on a frequent basis, from deep browns, tans, even reds, heavy with silt, to vibrant blues and greens, rich with minerals from mountain runoffs. Canyonlands is the land of surprises. Its non-stop shapes and colors. Its western scenery that stays in your mind long after you've experienced it. Just watch. The chain of remarkable and unique parks that compose the Grand Canyon experience always includes some truly stunning surprises, such as the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. From ancient habitats to the most dramatically beautiful lake on our planet, this grandest of canyons holds many secrets. Flying away from Canyonlands, we get a sense of something very different happening on our journey. The Colorado River begins to change size and shape. Rock colors vary wildly. Just over the horizon will be the second largest man-made lake in America, Lake Powell, named for the famous explorer. Stretching over both Utah and Arizona, the lake we're about to discover is deep, 400 feet deep in places and 186 miles long. Very soon, we'll see this hidden-away place is like no other location on Earth. Ahead are canyons of azure water and huge rock towers, countless sandy beaches, and dazzling blue skies. Now, we'll journey into a lake like no other, with 90 different water-filled canyons full of scenery and adventures. These waterways add up to some 2,000 miles of shoreline. A shoreline that is longer, in fact, than the entire west coast of the USA, from Seattle to San Diego. You'll see a paradise that welcomes some 3 million visitors a year. This vast man-made lake and its endless canyons hold 8.5 trillion gallons of water. Its summertime temperatures average 80 degrees. The red rock scenery is a signature mark of this playground that's perfect for houseboating, kayaking, fishing, and water sports of every conceivable type. Welcome to the southern region of Lake Powell, part of the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, with crystal clear waters and crystal clear skies, where daytime is paradise and nighttime is the darkest in the country, alive with 1 billion stars. Lake Powell's landscapes and waterscapes have you feeling you're in another world. The massive scale of the land, along with the vividness of red rock cliffs and amazing azure waters, make many people feel they are in a painting, not just looking at one. The chain of remarkable and different parks transforms into a different experience as we enter the surprising depths of Marble Canyon. It's the furthest north and east landscape of the Grand Canyon and our first introduction to Grand Canyon National Park itself. The Glen Canyon Dam that's seen here marks the end of Lake Powell and the place where the Colorado River becomes a river once again. Since the Colorado River waters here are so calm, it's a popular starting point for rafting trip journeys, great boating, and some legendary trout fishing. It is here where one of the earliest river crossing points, known as Lee's Ferry, opened for business in 1872. And today, it remains one of the very few places where one could actually drive up to the Colorado River. Back in 1869, Major John Wesley Powell was not the first to explore the Grand Canyon, but he was the first to come back alive. With his crew of 9 good mountain men and 4 wooden boats, John Powell started his journey in the powerful currents of the Green River in Wyoming, which Powell knew merged into the Colorado River, which in turn flows through the Grand Canyon itself. Powell's team drove their tough wooden boats over more than 1,000 miles of river, through winding canyons and over foaming rapids. But one by one, his boats were being smashed, his food often lost in sinkings and overturned boats. Indeed, the men's food supply had sunk to almost nothing. On July 5, Frank Goodman, one of Powell's best men, told the major he was leaving. Powell wrote down Goodman's farewell words, quote, "I've had more excitement than one man deserves in a lifetime, so I'm leaving." The team's morale was sinking. Most believed they'd never get out alive. Two months after their courageous journey had begun, the team floated into the northernmost section of today's Grand Canyon. As they navigated the rough waters, the crew saw the canyon walls were now as much as 2,500 feet high and composed of marble of a variety of different colors, which prompted Major Powell to name the canyon Marble Canyon. But to the crew of John Powell's expedition, this wasn't Marble Canyon. It might well have been called the Canyon of Disappointment. They were feeling they might never see the end of this unknown, uncharted waterway. Powell himself acknowledged the challenge still ahead. We have an unknown distance yet to run, an unknown river yet to explore. What falls there are, we know not. What rocks beset the channel, we know not. What walls rise over the river, we know not. This aerial journey has us winging over the end of the Marble Canyon that John Wesley Powell and his crew explored. We're beginning to see the Grand Canyon's immense north rim. The fact is, back in 1869, Powell had no maps and therefore no clue that upon leaving Marble Canyon, their journey would take them into the grandest part of the Grand Canyon, a place that would be many times larger and more dramatic than anything they had yet discovered. Now, like John Wesley Powell himself, you are an explorer heading into the Grand Canyon's spectacular south rim, the center point of the Grand Canyon National Park itself. The southern rim of the canyon is home to the Kaibab National Forest we're flying over now. This largest of all pine forests rests on a layer of limestone said to be 250 million years old. Naturalist John Muir once wrote, "The clearest way into the universe is through a forest wilderness." This region is alive with wild herds of elk, with countless caves and rock shelters bearing the pictures and words of people living here as many as 11,000 years ago. As we wing over the forest, the suspense and drama builds as we begin to see some of the greatest rock sculpture and forms nature has produced. And here, on the very edge of the canyon, is the famous El Tovar Lodge, a focus point for generations of eager visitors coming to the Grand Canyon. President Teddy Roosevelt came here in 1906. In a famous speech, Roosevelt proclaimed, "Keep it as the one great sight which every American should see." In the year Roosevelt came to the canyon, he signed into law the acts which created the nation's first national monuments and national parks. Among the largest was the Grand Canyon. And to manage the superb new parks, Teddy Roosevelt created our U.S. Forest Service. In all, he set aside over 234 million acres of public lands as parks, forests, and monuments. the Grand Canyon South Rim is one of planet Earth's most astounding landscapes. Welcome to the spectacular Grand Canyon. Bordering the national park to the east are the lands of the Navajo Nation. Working our way along the South Rim, we climb high to see this vast landscape. And to reveal another canyon, that of the Little Colorado River Gorge, winding its way far to the east. This confluence of the Little Colorado River and the Colorado River itself is virtually impossible to see from anywhere but above. In a moment, you'll be witness to one of the most amazing secrets hidden in the Grand Canyon. We're about to fly into a special place of sacred tribal lands and to discover a river that's a unique tributary of the main Colorado River. Welcome to the Little Colorado River Gorge. As these are sacred tribal lands, it's estimated that less than 1% of Grand Canyon visitors ever see this magnificent section coming into view soon with all of its colorations. Despite its name, this is no small canyon. Dropping into the narrow walls of this deep and long canyon, you're along for a look at one of nature's most remarkable displays of color, created by the limestone rock that is part of the riverbed. Thanks to the unique mineral effects, our journey along the Little Colorado is going to be a series of surprises, each more delightful than the one before. It is a visual symphony conducted by Mother Nature, set in the keys of blues and greens. Now, some 2 miles above the Colorado River Gorge region, we sweep toward the highest, most remote landscape of all. Its wilderness nature captured the eye of the early canyon visitor that was Teddy Roosevelt. We're on a course to the north rim of the Grand Canyon National Park. Pulling away from the South Rim, heading northward for a new realm of spectacular monuments by nature. The north rim of the canyon is much higher than the south rim. Its top approaches 9,000 feet in altitude. In this region of red rocks and canyons, the unexpected surprise is lush green forests. For years, people living here have named the most impressive rock formations as castles, towers, shrines, temples, and buttes, with names like Apollo, Jupiter, Venus, Solomon, and Sheba. You can view the North Rim almost as an island, complete with its own climate, meaning you can look from the South Rim with blue skies overhead into the North Rim to see thunderhead clouds and lightning storms. This isolated and more alpine climate has forests not only of pine, but also of fir, plus species of animals unique to the North Rim ecosystem. We're climbing steadily to get above the high plateau ahead. Since the North Rim is so remote, at least a day's journey by road from the South Rim, only a handful of people ever experience it. On the Kaibab Plateau you see below, President Teddy Roosevelt hunted for cougar and bear. His temporary hunting cabin in this forest survives to this day. From your front row seat in the sky, you'll be taking in the monumental beauty of the widest and deepest part of the Grand Canyon. We're about to journey through the famous Dragon Corridor. From the North Rim, we're now winging toward the West Rim. On our way, we're flying over the flatlands and deep canyons of the Havasupai tribe. They are ancient peoples in this region. Havasupai means people of the blue-green waters. The Havasupai have lived in this canyon for centuries. Of all the experiences along the pathway of parks we've explored, this coming flight into the West Rim canyons is very different. We're about to fly deep inside the canyon walls themselves. This is the Bar 10, a working cattle ranch that generates its own electricity and takes water from a nearby spring. It rests on a canyon ridge, but has its own trails deep down into the canyon floor. Today, hundreds of rafters on the Colorado River use the ranch's cowboys and mule teams to come up out of the canyon and head back home. From Bar 10 Ranch, we journey over the Colorado River as it heads west. In this close-up from the air, you see more unique views of millions of years of geologic evolution. Canyon's West Rim was a significant part of the early Wild West in America. In 1860, there were tribal battles and Old West gunfights here. The King Tut gold mine was opened, attracting prospectors and robbers. Along this Colorado River, as it winds through the West Rim canyons, tragedy struck the courageous men of John Wesley Powell's pioneering expedition of 1869. Constantly battling whitewater rapids on totally uncharted rivers, these explorers gradually lost their boats, their equipment, their food supplies, and finally, for most, their confidence in the journey. There's a plaque today deep in the canyon which marks the place where, in August 1869, 3 men in Powell's expedition left his group in fear for their lives. Major Powell tried to convince them to stay. They, in turn, tried to convince Major Powell to give it up, to join them in simply walking up and out of the canyons. To the Major, they argued continuing downriver would be suicide. At a place known today as Separation Canyon, Ora Mulholland, his brother Seneca, and Bill Dunn said their goodbyes to Major Powell and his remaining crew and began walking up Separation Canyon, heading for high ground. But when they reached the top of the canyon, they were killed by attacking Indians who mistook them for miners that had murdered a Wallapai woman on the Colorado River. Ironically, the very next day, when Powell and his remaining men got into their boats and headed downriver, they soon reached the end of the Grand Canyon to arrive at what is now Lake Mead. They were met by cheering settlers who were fishing from the shore. These settlers were astonished to see the expedition, since Powell and his men had not been heard from in 3 long months. Much of the Grand Canyon's West Rim is owned and lived in by the Wallapai tribe. The Wallapai treasure their lands and history. They have an enduring commitment to their tribe, to their families, to their lands. The tribe's Skywalk Bridge has attracted thousands of travelers from all over the world. Close by is another outlook known for its dramatic views up and down the canyon. Moving downriver from the lookout, you now see the gradual fading away of the tall canyon walls that are the signature of the Grand Canyon. We're flying into a different and popular place for sun and fun. It's the Lake Mead National Recreational Area. It's a man-made lake that's both a playground and a power source for Las Vegas. Heading west, we see the mile-high walls of the Colorado Plateau now fade away. In the distance, a new landscape of magnificent colors, unusual rock formations, and sparkling waters. Lake Mead. protect the lake, the government created the 1.5 million acre Lake Mead National Recreational Area. People journey here for all kinds of fun: boating and fishing, jet skiing, camping, swimming, exploring, and hiking. Located on the Colorado River about 30 miles due east of Las Vegas, Lake Mead is well known for both the towering Hoover Dam that made it possible and its fame as a water sports paradise. Spring and fall are prime time on Lake Mead. The scenery offers miles and miles of clear blue water beneath colorful cliffs. And even though thousands can be here simultaneously, people rarely feel crowded since the lake has countless hidden coves and bays, lots of them with great beaches for relaxing or camping. The construction of Hoover Dam in 1936, originally known as Boulder Dam, brought a new population to the southwest and sparked a new city called Las Vegas. This classic scene of the American West shows the headwaters and rivers which created and carved the Grand Canyon over time, ultimately producing the seventh wonder of the world. As President Teddy Roosevelt asked us all, leave it as it is. Keep it for your children, your children's children, and for all who come after you. In this hour, we have journeyed over a region of the world never before photographed quite this way. Our journey moved us through time, transporting us almost to the dawn of life on planet Earth. For the canyon's rock layers are the geologic pages of the ages. Above all, winging along the footsteps of the first peoples, of the heroic explorers, and of courageous presidents, we rediscovered what they had discovered, that there's much more to this land than simply the 277 river miles of the Grand Canyon National Park. There is also 1,000+ more miles of amazements that are a scenic treasure for mankind and for us today on Wings over Grand Canyon.